The constellations in the sky make up the greatest story ever told, and among these constellations are the anthropomorphized gods of mythology: Gemini, Hercules, Andromeda, Cepheus, and the rest. Also in the sky are the animals, such as Aquila, Hydra, Taurus, Pisces, and so on. These aren't exactly anthropomorphisms, but rather zoomorphisms, and were also revered as gods. In fact, this is where we get the word zodiac from, as zo comes from the word zoo, zodiac.
Well, the Bible tells us that although we are mortals, we are gods as well. Consequently, this application of the zodiac signs to our bodies occurs in symbolism. On earth as it is in heaven, the temple of God is in the heavens, and it dwells within us as well. Nevertheless, we create these anthropomorphisms, these gods built out of combinations of nature, celestial gods, plant gods, fertility gods, or compound gods containing many different elements. And they were all worshipped and written about as though they were living deities.
Even if there was a sectarian Jewish teacher living in Palestine during the first part of the first century called Joshua or Jesus, he had nothing at all to do with the crucified Christos of Paul's theology, and thus had no part to play in the formation of that distinctive amalgam of faiths that eventually swept the world. As far as the gospel narratives of Jesus are concerned, we can free ourselves forever from the need to lay bare a reality on which to base a more historically convincing portrait of a first-century teacher who in 3 short years was supposed to have founded a new religion, or so transformed an existing messianic faith that it could become almost immediately acceptable to a Gentile world. We are dealing with myth, not history. The question we now have to ask is, what was the nature and purpose of that myth?
Sol Invictus is often referred to as Mithra because of their strong correlation. In fact, the Persian and Roman sun god Mithra in the Mithraic Chronos, or personification of infinite time, is in the center of the zodiac. He is surrounded by his 12 helpers, or the 12 helpers of the sun. You will often find a goddess, a sun, or some sort of divine entity inside the zodiac when depicted in art. There are even old paintings and murals of Christ sitting on a throne surrounded by his 12 helpers. Sometimes these are depicted as 12 angels, and other times the 12 disciples. We've even found some that are depicted as the 12 signs of the zodiac. The important thing to know about the deity is that the deity is merely a character. It is the character's characteristics and the physical posture that are important. The name of the character can be interchanged and applied to different cultures and ages, but the numerous characteristics have remained the same in various deities, including Christ, Krishna, Horus, Mithra, Buddha, Quetzalcoatl, and many others.
Many of these characteristics represent this star of wonder, this only begotten Son of the Creator, God of God, light of light, very God of very God, begotten, not made. In other words, and as Jordan Maxwell likes to point out, this ball of light in the sky is not our responsibility, it's God's responsibility. It's not our sun, it's God's sun. This worshipful sun is the main star of all stars. It's the only star that is of real importance to us because it gives us our life. And likewise in this macrocosmic personification, the sun and all other stars in the sky are kings, making Jesus and Horus and all the other sun gods the King of Kings. Mythology never ended. Jesus is the newest myth, and most people are smart enough to know this fact, but so many are just too frightened to face it. The animals in my house tend to follow the warm sunlight around the house in the morning time, and these splashes of sun on the floor are in different locations at 7 a.m. in the spring versus 7 a.m. in the fall. It's the tilting of the Earth's axis that brings about these seasonal changes, and as simple of a concept as this may be, this is the gateway into some of religion's most guarded mysteries. If you film, videotape, or even take a time-lapse photograph of the northeastern section of the night sky on a clear night, you will see the apparent rotation of the stars around the North Star as the Earth rotates on its axis. But notice as these stars appear to spin in a circle, the stars on the eastern horizon appear to rise, just like the sun does.
Before there were calendars, and long before there were streetlights on every corner, one could watch the night sky and know when to prepare for winter or when to plant the crops. However, today with our bright lights in big cities, it's growing more and more difficult to see the stars at night due to something called light pollution. Our ancestors didn't have this problem. Their mystery schools and celebrations and their rituals were centered upon these yearly and easily observed celestial cycles, and the night sky would come to life with its stars.
In order to better understand these yearly celestial cycles, let's begin in spring. At 8:30 a.m. we see that the sun is above the horizon, and behind it is the constellation Pisces. And as we fast forward to autumn, we notice that the sun appears to remain in the same region of the sky at this particular time of day. And if we fast forward 2 months, we see that the sun appears to be in a completely new location at this exact same time of morning. When we superimpose the position of the sun at 8:30 a.m. in the early autumn with the position of the sun on Christmas morning at this very same time of day, the movement is obvious. This falling occurs under the sign of Scorpio in the autumn. The scorpion is the backbiter. It can betray you by looking you in the eye while it stings you with its tail. And when stung, the bite of a scorpion can resemble two lips like a kiss. This is symbolized in Scripture with the story of Judas, and Judas betrays Jesus with a kiss, and from this point forward, Jesus is symbolically falling to his death. And in nature, from this point forward, from our earthly perspective, the sun appears to be rising on the horizon closer and closer to the south each day. It's been falling to its death since its brush with the scorpion. And every day, it's been moving further and further to the south, and the days are getting shorter and shorter. The nights are getting longer and longer, and it's getting colder and colder. On the first day of the winter solstice, December 21st, the sun will not only cease its apparent descent into this abyss, but it also stops this southerly movement. And for 3 days, the sun will appear to rise on the horizon in the exact same place. No longer does it appear to fall, because fall has ended.
After the sun has appeared to be dead for 3 days, having not moved in its usual fashion, it begins to move in the opposite direction, to the north, and the cycle continues. And depending on the Earth's yearly angle with the sun, if you lived above the 66.5 to the 67 degree latitude line, you would notice that during these 3 days of the sun's symbolic death, there is no sun in the sky. In this part of the world, which just so happens to be the part of the world where our Norse traditions of the Christmas holiday come from, the sun will remain below the horizon, in the chthonic realm, sometimes called hell, for 3 days.